Wonder. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day. It's Friday, September 24th, and this is a day that our lives will be changed in ways we cannot imagine. Maybe that's true every day, but today is going to be special. Real quick, I'm not going to say a lot about Arizona, but I will say that the audit details are going to be released this afternoon at 4 o'clock in the Arizona Senate. The infamous Arizona audit will soon be public. It'll be known. Now, what will happen? If you want speculation on this report, you could tune in somewhere else. I'm not going to belabor what may or may not be in it. I've heard some phenomenal things, and hope springs eternal. The questions really, though, involve what impact will it have? I'm thinking it'll be one of two things. It'll either be a sonic boom along the lines of the chaos of January 6th, or there will be enough McCain loyalists in the Arizona Senate to kill any momentum this report would otherwise generate. They've already, every time there was a significant vote to be had, it proved to be very difficult to do because the Senate, they were always one vote short of getting exactly what they needed. I mean, they could have had the Board of Supervisors arrested and held in contempt of the Senate for not complying with their subpoena. But instead, one senator peeled off, one little RINO peeled off, and as a result, they had to go a longer way to do it. And this happened over and over again with the servers that they wanted. It took them forever to get them. They finally got them like a week ago, but all that was delayed because of just one RINO too many. It's always just one rather. It was kind of like when McCain did this business on the on repealing Obamacare. It's just Arizona. There's that spirit of John McCain. Even though he's dead, his spirit, like Voldemort, his spirit still looms over the state and over our state too. I might say there's definitely two spirits in North Carolina. You have the spirit of that, a pragmatism that's really politicians that look out for themselves, and they do it with a very stoic look, like they're high and noble statesmen. But really, to those people, human life is valued as something on a spreadsheet where people are assets or liabilities. That's how morality is measured for that type of political animal. And the other spirit is Jesse Helms. There's another ghost from the past, and his spirit would be more of a patriotic, loving America. I think Donald Trump certainly embodies that, as did Dan Forrest, and as does Mark Keith Robinson, among others. So these are people who do care about America versus people with a corrupt agenda like McCain had, the whole globalism, open borders, all that. But enough about corrupt Republicans. We know where the Democrats stand, but that's the Republican side of it. That's who represents the people and who represents the deep moneyed interests that really want to control the world and make everybody put really strange critters into our bodies and turn us into cybernetic organisms. But anyway, enough about that. That's a rabbit trail. The point is, the results in Arizona will speak for themselves, and we will, I think we're going to see something happen today. Either it'll be one sonic boom or one tremendous dud. That said, the facts will speak for themselves, and there are other audits that are happening in other states, but the question is momentum. Will this Arizona thing be squashed down to the point where there'll be very little momentum in any of this? Or will there be, if it's a really big deal, I predict you'll see some sonic boom elsewhere to distract the American people's attention from it. Say, can I say this? A lockdown of some sort, a press conference announcing new draconian, illegal infringements on our liberty, just anything that the media can use to talk about that and get people worked up about something that has nothing to do with Arizona. So to the extent of what the networks do tonight on TV, they'll come up with something. They'll come up with it. So I will have a link, at least one link to the site that'll have a live feed on the event. But I imagine it'll be overrun. It's Arizona legislature, asleg.gov/video player. We'll have that up on our website. Let's see, there'll be other sites, I'm sure. One American News, people like that will do it too. Now, in the teaser for what I'm doing today, I would have been on earlier, but I just finished I wrote my guts out on a book review for a great book by Elizabeth Harris. And Doc, if I didn't leave it over across the room, bear with me here a moment. Oh, this is so unprofessional. All right. Back here. Hopefully, a better sound. This is a great book. It's got a foreword by Mike Huckabee. I think I told you about this yesterday. There's just a couple things that I was going to highlight for you. There's so much to say about it. The bottom line to this book is there's 3 angles to it that make it a really good read. Now, people are going to, I'm sure the New York scholars will sniff at it. I wonder what Zoe Chance will say about it. I'll have to call her and ask her, but if she's read it yet, maybe I'll buy her a copy of it. But you think about this at 3 levels. This book really speaks to you, to me anyway. First off, you get the perspective of the wife of a politician, of an ambitious. I mean, it's not a crime to want to run for office and to win. We need godly people in politics, but let's face it, ambition drives that. And Mark Harris, God love him, but he decided he could do this and he would do this. And honestly, he deserved it. He'd worked hard and he earned it. There's a toll on this, on the family, that when a male politician writes a book about his career, it's cast differently than when the wife of that politician writes a book. And usually when you see a book like that, it's a tell-all, some dirty book about some woman stabbing her ex-husband in the back, and he was a politician, she hates him, and it comes through. You don't get that. Instead, you get a loving, supportive wife who is, she does it in a very noble way, just an extremely noble way in reporting the facts of this book. She's a great role model parent and wife, yet she explains, I got to read some of my own words here, she explains this side of the equation in a touching way. And I would recommend any Christian couple, and I mean this, if you know anybody in your family or friends who from church, and they're talking about running for office, buy them this book. Urge them to buy it and read it, because it's discouraging, but it can happen. This is what happens when you tangle with the deep state. And believe me, North Carolina has a deep state just as much as Washington does. Okay, that's one angle. So any Christian couple who's, one of them is looking at running, even if it's a female looking at running, and her husband, husbands, you should read this book and maybe show it to your wife if she's looking to run, because a lot of women are getting into politics these days. And it's even though this is written from a female perspective, it's well played. I was touched in a couple of places, getting in touch with my feminine side. Okay, part 2 about this, why it's significant, is the dealings that her husband had. It's just hilarious, and I don't know, hilarious isn't quite the word. It's very revealing that the now convicted felon chairman of North Carolina Republican Party, it gives us a hint of some of the forces driving the character assassination of Mark Harris. And I'll elaborate more on that. the power players involved in this. I have to admit, Beth Harris scratched the surface on this, but didn't go as deep as I would liked her to have done. Yet she did give a very good blow by blow, and I'll get to point 3 in a minute on what that is. But any Christian college student, or really anyone majoring in public policy or in political election management. I know Liberty has a degree in election management. I've taken some courses there just for fun and a little bit of money too, distance courses from them on campaign management. And I read a book by David Puff or whatever, the guy who managed Obama's campaign. It's a good book. I enjoy books like that. I wasn't happy with who won, but it was a very triumphant autobiographical account of history explaining the ins and outs of the campaign from the Obama campaign manager's perspective. This is a similar book to that. And because Beth was involved in this election, she quit her full-time job, went part-time, I think. Maybe she quit full-time, but Mark had quit. They were really working hard. And you get a real good insight into how it works. And, set aside the family drama of having a child who gets a brain tumor, or they thought had a brain tumor right before they were going to announce. And then how just fate or the Lord stepped in. Pittinger made some blunders that really hurt him. Pittinger was a deep state guy. In the 90s, he ran as a big conservative and got into the state house in North Carolina and looked really good. Conservatives loved him. They voted him into Congress. And as soon as he got there, he elbowed his way to the table and said, "Deal me in, boys." And he just became another deep state RINO. And it was like, boy, were we played, kind of like Renee Elmers and other politicians I won't name because some of them are still in power. Anyway, the character assassination was horrible in this book, and some deep state forces were behind it. And I've got one example in here involving Robin Hayes. I'll read to you in a moment from the book. Let's see. And finally, one cannot read this book and ignore the absolute raw deal that Mark Harris got from the State Board of Elections in North Carolina. Especially 3 key players in it were that Beth Harris did highlight were Director of Elections, Kim Strack, who was appointed by McCrory, I might add. Her sidekick, Joan Fleming, a former FBI agent who retired and took over the investigations division after Chuck Stuber ran for office. He quit his job and ran for office. And also the way Strack and Fleming both allowed Josh Malcolm, he was chairman briefly, but he was the Robeson County attorney who there's still a lot to be told about Josh Malcolm. I'm not going to commit slander here, but I will say that you follow Nick Oshner and the book he's got coming out, and you'll know a lot more about Josh Malcolm. Beth didn't cover that Malcolm angle as much as I would like her to have covered it, but I think Nick is going to fill in those pieces. So this book will really need to be read with Nick's, and between them, historians, scholars, and just political observers will get a very good look at what happened, a full spectrum look, and anything they miss, who knows, you might see filled in on my website. I will give Beth kudos, because she did actually mention our organization, Voter Integrity Project, on page 133, but that's not why I love the book. Okay, I teased about Robin Hayes, and let's see. I guess I'll get to that. I'm sorry. So my biggest takeaway from this entire ordeal is that our elections are being administered by a cartel of administrators and politicians who simply operate above the law. And our elected leaders are afraid to expose the gravity of the situation, or either afraid to expose the gravity of the situation with a full forensic audit, say, or they're complicit in the arrangement. One of those 2 facts are true. And I'm just, either they're scared of it, because the political consultants are involved in this. You've got a cartel that runs our elections. And I had no idea how dark this was when we got into this back in 2011. Honestly, if I had, I think I would have just gone into the mission field. But this is my mission field for a season. And here we are. Okay, I'm gonna close. I could rant and ramble on, but I gotta tell you about this Robin Hayes thing. It's so funny. See, there are other hints at how corrupt the deep state runs in this book, the North Carolina deep state, I should say. But in a nutshell, you got the Robin Hayes ordeal. Okay, she on page 94. I'll read to you from Beth's book. It says, State GOP Chair Robin Hayes called Mark and told him that if he would promise not to join the Freedom Caucus, Robin would help him raise funds. Mark told Robin he had already pledged to join and could not go back on it. We really didn't hear from Robin again until we saw him at the end of the summer, and what turned out to be a very embarrassing moment for him. Then you fast forward, President Trump was coming to a high dollar fundraiser in Charlotte area at the Carmel Country Club in the Mecklenburg County area. These are appealing to the Pittinger millionaires, the deep staters in Charlotte, but they were playing that game. They needed the money and they were raising good money. They got a lot of people in there. Anyway, it says President Trump was due to arrive between 4 and 5 p.m. We had arrived at the club around 11 a.m. We had to check in through security just like everyone else. People had to show they had their tickets. They had to show ID, of course. Nice dig. Then we were given identification credentials for the event. She goes on about how nice her children looked and all that. And it says, while we were standing around outside the club in the credentials area, North Carolina GOP Chair Robin Hayes approached us. We chatted for a time as we waited to get our credentials, as Robin had a small part in the program. Suddenly, the Trump people nixed that. They did not want Robin to appear at the event with the president. Robin kind of smiled, shrugged it off, and left. Later, we learned that Robin was under investigation by the FBI as part of a big operation initiated by North Carolina's new Republican Insurance Commissioner, Mike Causey. Robin later pled guilty to 1 count of lying to the FBI. As we think about this in hindsight, it gives us pause. There was a reason Trump didn't want to be seen with Hayes, yet he had no qualms about being seen with us. At that time, McCrae Dulles, had been under investigation by the FBI for approximately 4 months. Now, you have to read the book in context to understand what that's saying. As the FBI was investigating both McCrae Dulles and Robin Hayes. And Dulles was right there associated. The whole deal with Mark Harris was McCrae Dulles. And he was the Russia and Harris was the Trump. And they were trying to show that Dulles was doing great evil things, sort of like Russia. And then and Harris was complicit, therefore Harris had to go. That was their narrative. The whole thing with the Trump-Russia collusion. Oh, look at all these lies that later came out. They were all lies about Russia, but Trump. The whole narrative was Trump was colluding with them. So it's kind of a microcosm of what happened there. Now that's interesting in and of itself. If you view what happened in North Carolina in that context, I know a lot of the deniers and even a lot of smart people who felt like they understood this story. I mean, the BBC guy argued with forever on it. And some people on our side I've had to explain. They're going, oh, I'd watch out on what you're saying about this. Now, these people are lawyers that go out and make a living, and they didn't follow this as closely as I did. All they know is what their buddies tell them at the bar. There are their lawyer buddies in their guild that tell them at the bar. Now, one other aspect of this book that Beth didn't cover that disappointed me was the dealing with lawyers. Because just like General Flynn had really bad lawyers early in his federal prosecution, and the kangaroo trial they had him set up for, I think Mark Harris had bad lawyers too. I would like to see more about that, and we're not going to. There were some people, some are very established Republican attorneys that were involved in this until they weren't. And then others, I think his name is David Freeman. I should check that first name. He recently passed away due to COVID. I'm sorry it goes out to his family. Freeman even, none of them were as smart as McCrae Dallas's attorney, a woman named Cynthia Singletary. You know, these are high dollar attorneys in Raleigh. Actually, Freeman was in Winston-Salem. And by the way, Freeman, he wound up costing the Harris family over $100,000. So you talk about a financial drain on Harris's life. I mean, I'll cover that in my close here in a moment. But the, John Branch, Roger Knight, big GOP attorneys, and Freeman, between the three of them, none of them were as smart as Cynthia Singletary, Elizabethtown attorney, who understood the rules and the criminal proceedings. Said, hey, my client has answered the subpoena. Therefore, you cannot charge him with a crime, because the deal at that kangaroo court or show trial, the deal was they've subpoenaed you and you have to show up, or you can go to jail for failing to honor the subpoena. However, your testimony, as the chair would always say, your testimony is voluntary. If you do testify, you will be sworn in under oath, and anything you say can and will be used against you. So that was the deal for all the witnesses coming in. Now, it's a big mystery to me, and Beth didn't cover this as well as I'd like her to, was why did Mark testify? Now, Mark Harris has told me some of the inside baseball on why he did it, and I wish that had come out in the book. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to repeat it. I'll let Mark tell the story. But that part has always bothered me, is, why she gave the attorneys a pass in a couple of places in this book, and it kind of annoyed me, because I think just like General Flynn, I think Mark Harris had some bad legal advice. Now, I'm not an attorney, and I'm just critiquing it. But let's go. I'm going to set that aside and just say that's a story that wasn't told that I wish was told. That what the role of the attorneys in this, because Cynthia, she offered the board a deal. She said, my client will be happy to testify if you will give him immunity. Otherwise, we're walking. And they went into recess. They were freaked out, and they said, they came back and said, no, we're not giving him immunity. So she said, all right, peace out. I'm out of here. And McCrae and this Singletary walked out, and that was the end of it. Now, if history will never tell us what would have happened if Mark Harris had said, I'll let the facts speak for themselves, but I'm not going to testify. If Mark had done that, would he be a congressman? For the longest time, I thought he would, but in reading this book, I think, no, he probably wouldn't have. I think they would have, Nancy Pelosi would have used all the nonsense that came out in that show trial to just say, no, we're going to seat the other candidate. We think the other candidate is worthy of this. So by Harris ordering another election, he did the Republican Party a huge favor, because if he had stuck to his guns, or if he'd had a little better legal advice and just not shown up for the hearing, like McCready, the opponent, he didn't show up. Had Harris just not shown up, this whole thing would have fizzled out. And I thought, okay, so he'd have taken his seat. But no, probably what would have happened was Pelosi would have just seated the Democrat, and that would have been that. So Harris, he took a significant hit for the team, and he's to be honored for this. And I've grown to love the man in seeing this. I wasn't a big fan. I mean, I would have voted for him, and this goes back to 2014, and I felt like he got played when he came into that election as a foil for to make sure Greg Brannon did not win, because Greg Brannon would have been another Rand Paul kind of reformer in the Senate, and the deep state couldn't allow that. So Robin Hayes quit his job that year, that 2-year stint with the state board of, no, he was the NCGOP chair. He didn't run that year, and they put Claude Pope in for that 2-year period. And then Hayes came back. But during that time, Hayes worked behind the scenes to get Mark Harris into the race. And Beth only talked about that briefly at the beginning, saying that it was Mark's idea to run for state senator, for US Senator, not Robin Hayes's, as was widely rumored at the time. But the fact was Robin Hayes is in there helping to do it. I remember seeing a news account at the time that Hayes was involved. So did Hayes egg Harris into running against Brannon so they could destroy the Tea Party? Because the deep state hated the Tea Party, and they knew they could, if they could divide them between the pro-lifers and the more liberty-minded people, they had a chance of getting Tom Tillis in without a runoff, which is exactly what happened. Because if Tillis had to run one-on-one against Brannon, it would have been ugly, because Tillis would have had to debate him, and Brannon would have filleted him, because Tillis, I'll leave it at that. Tillis won. He's our senator. Long live the senator. Okay. Last point on this is the Dallas Woodhouse, Robin Hayes. What happened? She picks it up on page 131. What was going on in this was the Democrats, who were they? Josh Malcolm, the board chairman, and Joan Fleming, and Kim Strack, who was appointed by a Republican, by the way. She only voted Republican twice in her entire nonpartisan career, but they were the people running this, the Strack, Fleming, Malcolm show. And part of the deal was a drip, 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 just like Trump-Russia collusion. Every week, they would drip more information out there. Most of it was irrelevant, totally irrelevant. Example that I'll close with involved. There were several, but I'm not going to go into all of them. The one I'm going to close with was that one of the big allegations was that the tape, at the end of early voting, there's a tape that comes out with all the results on it. It's big. Apparently, it's I haven't seen this tape, but I don't know how big it is. I don't know if it's a DRE tape that's this big, or if it's just a piece of tape that's long enough to have all the results just printed out, and that's it. I think that's what it is. It's just a slender piece, but they keep it all rolled up nice and tight and roll it down enough to show, well, not supposed to show anything. The people at some key officers at the early voting location are supposed to sign it. So the head of the early voting location turned a blind eye while somebody else rolled out more than they should have seen, and they saw the results of the sheriff race, which was apparently the first race on the ticket. At any rate, if they saw anything else, they didn't talk about it, but there were gasps when the sheriff race results. Somebody goes, wow, I'd have thought the black guy was going to win. And so that was verbal. Everyone turned around to look, and they were looking at the tape. So that became a big deal in the trial. Had nothing to do with Mark Harris, nothing to do with the congressional race, everything to do with the local sheriff contest, which was what drove everything in Bladen County. It's a very big deal down there. It's a very big deal in places like Wake County too. Only Wake County voters were too stupid to realize it, as they let a open borders progressive walk in and take over the county. Oh well. The point is, things like that tape caused that was an excuse. They put that out in the news that, oh, the early voting results were leaked early and people were able to see it, and that became a big, totally irrelevant point to drive the news cycle for a solid week. And okay, so Wayne Goodwin, the insurance commissioner, former insurance commissioner, who got defeated by Mike Causey, Goodwin held a December 11th news conference at the North Carolina Democrat Party. And I'm going to paraphrase here, they talked about that tape. And that this is horrible. The leaks of early voting information had gone to Dallas. They just threw lies out there and said it would be months before sworn testimony would prove that it was a baseless accusation. But here we go. After the December 11th news conference by Wayne Goodwin, Mark Harris lost the support of the state GOP. No one bothered to actually read the affidavit of the person who, her name was Willis, or his name, I don't even remember, the affidavit that showed that it was all just, it was just smoke and mirrors. Nobody bothered to read the affidavit. Instead, they just talked about the tape. Everyone blindly accepted the Democrat Party's of North Carolina's spin on the situation. That would be Wayne Goodwin's. So I'm going to read now. It says, both North Carolina Republican Party Chairman Robin Hayes and Executive Director Dallas Woodhouse went public with statements that if early voting results had been viewed, a new election was required. Dallas Woodhouse even appeared on MSNBC. Harris's political enemies and vultures on the fence salivating for the seat were having a field day. 3 days later, or 3 days after the Democrat Party's December 11th news conference, I was entering a GOP event in another county outside the 9th District. I saw Dan Barry, former 9th District candidate, in front of the venue with one hand in his pocket, posing for the camera as he gave an interview. Dan Barry knew nothing. He could not even return my call. He would not even return my call to him to speak to me directly about the situation. Charlotte political consultant Larry Shaheen was on the phone 24/7 with the media, according to a local source. Someone kept posing as an insider on our campaign. Shaheen allegedly played so fast and loose with the truth that another Republican consultant, Paul Shoemaker of Raleigh, called him and told him to cool it. Both Shoemaker and Shaheen had worked for Robert Pittinger, who lost to Mark in the primary. I was shocked one evening as I was about to get out of the car to attend a Republican women's Christmas party. Amy Gardner of the Washington Post texted me she'd been told by a source claiming to be close to our campaign that I was heavily involved in absentee ballots. Put that in quotes. Perhaps the source supplied her with my cell number, or perhaps she obtained it elsewhere. I do not know. I closed the car door and responded to her text. When I informed her that all I had done was downloaded the 5 a.m. posting of absentee and early voters from the elections agency website to print and take over to our Union County headquarters, she texted back, "So you weren't chasing down ballots in Bladen County? ? No, I responded. Gardner and Nick Oshner of WBTV were the only reporters in America who had the decency to check out the tales handed to them. A relative in another part of the state told me a story was indeed printed by a different news outlet, stating that I'd been very hands-on with Dallas's, that's DOWLESS, Dallas's program, which is an absolute lie. So it all centered on the lies were incredible. And that's the kind of thing they were playing against Beth and Mark Harris. Who were they? That's the question. That's the unanswered question in this book. We kind of get a taste of it. It was Kim Strack, Joan Fleming, and Josh Malcolm. But I think there's others. I wonder what role did Josh Lawson play, John Branch, Roger Knight. I wonder what role these people played. We don't know. I hope that comes out in Nick Oshner's book. Coming out November 16th. I'll have a link to it on our website. I recommend you read, that people read both of these books. Certainly buy the Beth Harris book, because did I mention that they ran up over 100,000 in legal bills over this that they had to pay out of their pocket. So he didn't tell me where they took a mortgage out or where they cashed out IRAs. Who knows? He was a pastor with a retirement plan. So at any rate, she goes into details about how the whole thing ended, and it was pretty ugly. He had a medical situation that was terrible, and he almost died. They had a hole in the back of his heart that was a childhood problem that caused a diverticulitis infection to spread to his entire body, and he had gone into septic shock before they realized what was going on, and they did MRIs and found these spots on his brain. They weren't mini strokes, they were strokes, but they were small and in targeted areas. They were full-born strokes in multiple places in his brain. This is between Christmas and the February 14th hearing, or early February hearings. So they went through that, and they were going through all kinds of intravenous, they got out of ICU. It went into IV treatment where Beth was having to administer IV drugs to Mark twice a day. And this trial was supposed to go 3 days, and Mark Elias dragged it out into a 4th day. So they had to hustle back to Charlotte to get more stuff and then come back. And then this exhausted, sleepless Mark Harris, still under these drugs with all these strokes, gets on the stand, and Mark Elias is not going to let him off till Harris screws up and perjures himself. He makes a mistake, and then they halt the hearings. And this is where it diverged. Beth she was so deferential to lawyers. And earlier I had heard Mark Harris had told me that what the lawyers did, and Beth didn't go into this as much, but after that problem happened, I knew it had happened when I was at the trial, and I watched it and went, uh-oh, he just perjured himself. And they went into recess, went to lunch, and took a long time coming back. And we realized, okay, he's going to resign. It's over. And I had some of the lawyers around were going, no, you're crazy. And others got it. And they were going, yeah, he's going to cite his health. And he's going to step down. And that's exactly what happened. Mark told me that they took him in the back room and said, you perjured yourself out there and you're going to be prosecuted for it. So in addition to all your other problems, Josh Lawson threatened him with prosecution and said that Lauren Freeman, this is all hearsay from Mark, and he'll probably step away from it. I should shut my mouth. We don't know if this happened or not, but that was the initial take I got from Mark Harris, was that Josh and Lauren threatened him with a perjury prosecution. So with all that hanging overhead, he needed to make this go away. And so, they were exhausted financially, mentally, and physically. So he stepped down and took one for the team, ordered a new election. And then Dan Bishop won that election, and the Republicans held that seat. So that's the way it ended. It was a sad ending, but heroic in many ways, and great insight and play-by-play of what happened that day, that week in their lives, that 3-month period, if you will, which is dramatic from the campaign, 6 months, 9 months, from winning, actually losing in 2016, then winning in 2018, the joy, and then the agony. And you combine that with the Nick Oshner, Michael Graff book coming out in November, and you'll get a clearer picture of just how corrupt North Carolina truly is. And then the question becomes, simply put, what are you going to do about it? Blessings. Okay, this is awkward.